Okay, so we've got a good day picked out here to work on this hood project. I'll just do a quick video of what we got planned. All right, today we are going to take this hood and we are going to replace a section of it all along here, maybe 2 inches in, because of all this rust. So this hood's off a 69 or 70 Charger maybe, and it probably sat up on the car and just collected moisture and rain and sand and everything else in it and rusted this out. The rest of the hood's in really nice shape for as old as it is. There's a few dings and dents here. I've got some of them circled. But overall, this hood's really nice and straight. It's a very good candidate to save. And that's what we're gonna see if we can do. Front of it's got a little curve down here that's not quite right, but all this is usable. It's gonna go on that Charger in the shop, so. And tools we're using, I just grabbed some stuff that I think we're gonna need. Pretty much some basics. That grinder will probably work pretty well. There's the door off that car. We got us some heat. We got some heat on the subject. It's about 39 degrees out here today. It's not very warm at all, but it is sunny and there ain't no wind. And there's some daylight for the next 3 or 4 hours, at least 5 maybe. So we're gonna do this called cut and butt method. And we're gonna use this piece of metal to flat weld, butt up against this other good metal right here. And this technique is just something I found on YouTube from Fitzy's channel, Fitzy's Fab or whatever. And all the research I've done, I think this is one of the best ways to do this. So we're gonna try that, but you'll see here in a minute what's gonna go on with that. Okay, now one of the things we're gonna have to figure out here is all these spot welds along the back side of the hood. There's one there, there's another, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so probably 7 or 8 spot welds. There's 1 or 2 on the ends. This one we'll probably have to deal with. We'll drill those out. That'll be happening next. There's really no sense in trying to save any less. You don't want to just cut way down into here, because if you save this part of your hood and you think this is all great, it's basically, yeah, this metal's fine, but there'll be spots in here that you can't even see on the backside that are about to weld, they're about to rust through. So I'm gonna go up far enough to where we can make a substantial piece of metal. And I think this is thicker gauge metal. In fact, I know this is slightly thicker gauge metal than the original metal on the hood. And what that's gonna help do is, as we tack weld and basically butt weld the new metal to the old metal, we can actually concentrate on the thicker metal just a little bit more, because this is pretty hard to weld to, even with gas. Even with a MIG welder with gas, it's doable, but it just gives you a little bit more if you can focus on this heavier metal a little bit more and lead your weld into that. It's really important to do this properly, otherwise you'll end up warping this whole thing. And my whole goal, I've done this several times, but not enough to be awesome at it. My whole goal is to get this to not warp the hood, and heat and grinding, and every tack weld's got to be in the perfect spot. Otherwise it just puts a flex in something, and pretty soon it's flexed over there and then over there, and it's worse when you get to the end. So that's the goal here. And then this piece, we're going to have 1 strip of metal that goes across here, and I'm going to make a separate strip of metal on the back. Okay, and there'll be continuous welds on, well, spot welds on the inside and the outside, and then we'll curve this down with a grinder. So it'll be super strong, but it'll be, you know, we'll make our own angle iron, basically, piece of angle, as opposed to trying to curve this. Because if you tried to curve this down, it's going to bow, and you have a compound curve with curve this way and a curve this way. Okay, so 2 individual pieces of metal are going to be, I think, from what I hear, a better way to do this. So we'll see how that goes. I'm definitely going to be orange by the end of the day. Well, after researching this some more and just running into a problem, I think what I'm going to have to do, because this cut and butt method is to lay a piece of metal into the hood and be welding it on as this piece of metal is still there. Okay, and the problem with doing that in this case is you can't get the old piece of metal out after you start welding the new piece of metal in on top of it, right? So I think what I'm going to do is cut with a die grinder like this into here all the way down, because this is going to get replaced. And what that'll do is leave this distance between, you know, the overall distance of the hood won't change, because we'll know where the factory line's supposed to be. So I think I'm going to cut all this off, continue to drill out these spot welds, leave this piece underneath the undersheet metal here. There is some bad parts in this, by the way. There's some down here that's rusted in half, and way down on this end it's actually bad, but in the middle it's still solid, I believe. So we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and grind all this out, but that still retains the length of the hood, from the front of the hood all the way to the back of the hood. The length will be the same. We'll be able to lay this sheet metal on top, trace it with a Sharpie pen underneath, come back up here, cut this piece of metal and the orange hood at the same time, and start butt welding that together. Trim off the rest of this that's left over, make a new piece to replace this. That's the plan at this point. That's gonna make it really weak right there if I grind all those off. I think we're gonna run into problems. I don't know. Okay, so I hand traced a line across to this. Just hand trace that. I'm going to match it up with this line. Goes to about there. This line goes to there. See that line there? Something about like that. About like that. So I think what I'm gonna do is cut out, I haven't cut this yet. I'm gonna take this piece back off, just sitting here. I'm gonna cut out with a grinder, kind of an angle like that. This is a little closer to, not straight up and down, but more of an angle. That leaves some of this metal underneath. It's just a little bit more original metal at an angle. And I'm gonna cut out this half. So basically a big, I'll cut out the orange hood underneath this halfway. And that way, I still have the original here on this half of the hood. I've already cut this out, but I'll know exactly what distance to make this. You know, within a 64th of an inch, it'll be accurate. And then we'll make this two different pieces. So I'll have a right side and a left side, and then I'll end up welding this down the middle as well. That's the plan. Hopefully that works. All right, and this is why this is so critical that you get it right. Otherwise, you'll just cause a ton of problems. So now that that's cut, if you look down there, you'll see a height difference. Come on, focus. Just a little bit of height difference in your metal here as you weld it back up will cause, see that way down there? How it's, boy, this camera's picky. I don't know if you can see that or not, but if I push down right here where my fingers are at, like right here, down there it moves a little bit. So it's very important as you butt this next piece of metal up against here that it's exactly the right height. I just broke that last little piece of weld, or last little piece of metal with that. Snapped it open. And then I'm gonna cut that right there. This spot weld's already done, and this piece of metal is actually gonna fall right off in my hand. Remember, this is not how I originally planned on doing this. But I think, what did I just do? I think this is the only thing I can come up with. Come on, baby. You have to decide early on in your project how, how much of a restoration are you going to do. This hood, the plan with this hood is still a usable hood. It's very expensive. This hood's probably $1,000 to buy a new one from Taiwan. So you're not really going to find an original one out there for an affordable amount of money that's any better shape than this one is. But anytime you do body work underneath, metal like this, it's already rusty. It's been there for so many years. It's going to have rust. I mean, here it is actually. So that's what the whole underside of the hood looks like on every old car. So at some point, you're going to have to draw a line and say that's as good as I can do. So, or it's as much as I can get to. So right here, I got in here really good just to see what's there. This metal down in here is in pretty good shape. It's pitted here. There's some holes. There's a little break there. I don't know. We'll see what I do. But at some point, you have to treat this with POR-15 or similar product and move on. And that's what we're going to do to this hood. So we're going to give it some new life, but it's going to be far from perfect. Okay. And as I found out a little farther down the project here, the original metal and the metal that I bought a long time ago is exactly the same width. There's no step there at all. So I guess that's all right. This will end up butting up against it. We'll end up finding a perfect place to tack weld this. There'll be a gap, just the right width of gap, so that we can add a weld, a circle weld, and then add another weld to it, and there'll be no holes or pinholes when we get done. It'll be perfect. And the trick is just to make sure that no waviness is in there, as little as possible, so when we get finished, there won't be any warping out here. Well, here's what it looks like after I cleaned it up. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do I just ignore all that? Maybe. Maybe I cut all that out, redo that piece as well. I'm gonna think about it for a night. All right, here's the underside of the hood. This is the side we cut open. It's got its share of issues. But the whole hood overall is great. I mean, try to find that just for $100 anywhere. So I think I want to save this hood. I already had this hood fit onto my car. Let me show you, these threads are in good shape. The hood fits perfectly. Like, I adjusted the hinges and everything so that when I got the engine bay finished, all I have to do is line a couple marks up and this thing will bolt down. Really nice. It'll fit on the edges and stuff really good. The front right here has a little wow to it. I think you can probably tell. I am not used to the focus on this camera. Anyhow, it's bent in a little bit right there, but overall good. And the other side, it's nice and straight, with the exception of this being rolled in. I think that is a little tight. It needs to come out this way a little bit more. Not too much. I'll just wait till I get that fitted on the car first before I deal with that. Ugly brown. But yeah, in between everything on metal, where do you where do you draw the line? Probably should have this hood dipped in a chemical, but then you end up with chemicals down inside of here. That can be a problem. So who knows? I'll give little Corolla some exercise today.